The churches I used to go to, Bob, some of them Polish women brought some of the best rolls I've ever seen.
The rolls.
There would be a record.
Pierogi.
Grape leaves or pierogies. Okay, grape leaves. I was going to say, I had a Greek teacher in Bible college who, his wife, every time I would come over to his house because I was his only student, she would bring me the grape leaves rolled up with this awesome rice concoction. It was great. You've heard the joke, right?
Which joke?
Jesus is on the cross and he's dying and he's going, Peter, and Peter crawls up, is getting beaten by the Romans, and he gets past all the Romans. He gets to the bottom of the cross, and Jesus says, Peter, I can see my house from here. Oh, never mind.
Okay.
Also, you know that a woman was actually one of the first ones to have Christ in them, Bob. Can't forget that one.
What's that?
It was a woman who was the first one to have Christ in them.
That's true.
That's true. All right. And on that note, so Bob, that's all you want to share. Do you just want to? Okay, that's fine.
Hey, I may stick in a few more things later.
Hey, the latter part is when we get into the real fellowship. And we've had a couple hot ones lately. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut everybody off. You guys can talk.
Right. We're still here.
Okay, cool. Good, because I got a question. The one thing, I know this just relates to one little thing that was at the beginning, but it's something that keeps coming up, and I get bugged by it every time I hear it. And that's where it talks about, people start talking about, well, there's going to be judgment. Okay, yes, there is. But the one thing they never mention, they do mention the judgment, but they never mention, it seems, the forgiving God we have. And where it says things like, in 1 John chapter 1 and verse 9, it talks about, God will cleanse us from all unrighteousness. I see what happened. Mike got a problem. He'll be back. In any case, it says, God will cleanse us from all unrighteousness. In Psalms, it talks about, removing our sin as far away from us as the east is from the west. I mean, when we screw up, I screw up a lot, but I also go to God a lot and say, look, God, I messed up here. And I just thank you that, you can forgive me for that. So there's got to be more to it than just, you're going to get judged on every sin you ever committed, because that can't be possible. Or every sin you committed after, the new birth. I don't know if I'm making myself real clear here. Anybody have any thoughts on that, or am I just crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy. Goodness. I do say that, ever since you have some sort of Christian consciousness that you are a spiritual person and you don't want to screw up very often, you do try to remember what you did screw up about and ask forgiveness for it after you're sorry. Whether or not the blanket remission and the blanket remission, when you say, oh crap, I can't remember them all, please just, save me, forgive me for the crap that I've been committing, I think that's pretty real. I mean, you do your best. I don't know.
Okay.
Everybody has the same thoughts, Don.
As long as I know I'm, You know, I just want to work for God. That's all I want to do.
Yeah.
And,
You just keep moving towards the light. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
right. The most beautiful part of Christianity is we can stand up, dust ourselves off, and keep going.
yeah, that's true. Very true. You know, and I think, you know, if you don't gloss over things, if you know, one of the things, pulled my earphone out, one of the things that I've been learning lately, I got a great book. He's not a Christian. What's the name of it? God. Growing yourself back up, or growing yourself up. I'll send it to you. It's guys in particular have a tendency to be very shallow, and I'm speaking for myself. Maybe you're not shallow, but you take a back seat in an active role sometimes. Women are not so reticent to lay it all out there. It's there. You know, you can't disguise it. You can't cover it up. It's out there. But guys, you know, kind of like Adam when he was standing next to Eve during the temptation, didn't say a goddamn thing. You know, he just let her go down with the ship. And we have a tendency, I think that's systemic sometimes. So I think it's incumbent upon guys sometimes. I think there was a book somewhere, you know, maybe you guys have read it. I haven't. Something about Adam. You know, The Silence of Adam, was it? I don't know, maybe you guys know it. But we have a tendency to sort of not be as out front there as we should. And I know for me, for one, I'm trying to be more in the moment, active, not just letting things pass, not letting my wife or anybody else take flack for what's coming at them. And what happens is so much comes at us over and over again that it's almost like we get so hammered with it. I mean, I know I do. And I try to be more in the moment, more always ready to give an answer to anyone who asks me the reason of the hope that is in me, you know, always ready to stand for the truth and not just sort of flake out, well, I don't remember that. Or, you know, I try to remember more and more every day. I try to be more stand-up guy every day. I think it's pretty critical for guys to remember that. That's just me talking here.
Life is a progressive revelation.
What is?
Life, learning stuff like that.
Yeah. There it is. Nice beard, Michael.
Huh? I get knocked
That's a
out.
great beard you got there.
You like that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I can't get mine any more than this. Yeah.
Mine's starting to go in every direction. Mine used to go down, but now it goes sideways. And
That's my eyebrows.
yeah, I have my eyebrows too. Yeah.
Eyebrows. Oh yeah, the hairy. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Crazy shit. Oh man. Oh.
So no more pacifists. That's that pacifism in you.
It is. Yeah. And it's taken me, you know, how I'm 64, and I realized that I have this safety. I used to have this safety valve that just said, "Oh, I don't need to concern myself with that." Well, damn it, I do need to be concerned with every little thing. You know, I'm this great, you know, jot and tittle guy, right? Okay, great jot and tittle guy. Well, what about what's happening in your family, or what's happening with your kids, or little things that are happening with your relations. You know, recently, this past year, 2017, I've shed a lot of bullshit in my life. People, relationships that do not promote goodness or greatness, or relationships that have soured, where they don't bless me or my wife or my kids. I just shed them. You know, I don't have time to be nice all the time. I try to be nice. I'm a nice guy, but you know, you have very little time left. We're all, you know, older people. We don't have very many young people here tonight, but we stand for stuff. Just talking.
No, I understand, Bob. Recently, we were unfortunately at a funeral, and I spoke out to the preacher. It's a pretty deep story, but at the end, it was like, you gave these people no hope. So when he stopped me after I had met him earlier, he said, well, do you love me more? And I said, well, yes, I love you, but you gave these people no hope. I was waiting for you to read out of the book of Thessalonians. I said, you know, this is just the beginning, don't you? And I mean, that was at a funeral. So, but it was like, enough is enough. You know, the next people that he has to do a funeral for, I didn't want them have to leave there with not feeling loved and better days ahead. And oh my goodness, what Mike told him tonight, the hope, you know.
Yeah.
We're just happy campers right now. So yeah.
I know what you're talking about, Bob, because I have just gotten to the point lately. I don't want to put up with people's crap anymore. You know, there's so much stuff out there that is just absolute BS. And the days are evil. I'm not going to waste time with people who don't want to learn. If they've got all the answers, fine. Let them have the answers, and I'll move on and go find somebody who's got a neat cart.
Yeah, we don't have all that time in the world.
Yeah, the days are evil.
My little sister turns 60. My little sister, I have 4 sisters, and my little sister turns 60 December 6th, and it's like, oh crap. Wait a minute, she's my little sister. What's up with that? So
It's called good living.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's good stuff. Hey, I wanted to say a couple things on Michael's stuff, if I could. I just, as you were teaching, Michael, is there a way to share your screen? How do you share your screen in this?
Upper left-hand corner, a little box will come out, and there's a green box with an arrow.
Oh,
You highlight. If you
okay.
cursor over, it says screen share.
Okay, so I'm going to share this.
It's going to come up with
okay. It's hopefully Bible Works. Is it there?
It's there.
Yep.
Okay. I did. Michael, when you're working this stuff, I looked at Psalm 93 and Jeremiah 51, where it talked about. Let's see. Hold on. The Lord reigns. He's clothed. Let me change versions. King James isn't always the greatest. All right. The Lord reigns. He's clothed with majesty. The Lord has clothed and girded himself with strength. Blah, blah, blah. Your throne is established of old. You're from everlasting. So it's a creation text. The floods. Okay. Think of the great waters. The floods have lifted up, O Lord. The floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their pounding waves more than the sound of, there it is, many waters, or the great waters. If you can see my cursor and the word Rob underneath the great waters, then the mighty breakers of the sea, the Lord on high is mighty, his testimonies, blah, blah, blah. So the many waters have lifted up their voice. You'll read in scripture, not just here, but there's Jeremiah 51 and a couple other places where the great waters can speak, and it's a metonymy of I don't know what the hell it is. Metonymy. It's or is it synecdoche? I can't remember. It's a figure that means, you know, somebody's talking. It says it's the waves. It ain't the waves. It's those beings that are confined in the celestial sea. The waves lifting up their voice, and you'll see that many times in the Psalms, God's dealing with the boisterous sea, the many waters. And yes, it might be, you know, as you were saying, it might be in some contexts the peoples of the earth. But I would wonder, and I've never done a study, I would wonder if it might be the peoples of the confined portion of heaven, which is the celestial sea. And it doesn't say, I mean, it says in the scriptures, and I can give them to you, Michael, if you want, that there are these entities that are confined in the waters, but it doesn't say it doesn't say they can't change. In other words, as I understand it, Jesus is up there building his church. He's not down here. We're building our church. He's building his church in heaven, and his church consists of angelic beings because he's the head of all principality and power now, and he's building his church according to Hebrews 12. And these guys can get out of confinement and become good guys, as far as I understand it. It doesn't, you know, angels aren't always good or bad. They can change. But anyway, this voice or the waves or the sound of the many waters or the voice of the waves, and might be interesting to look at that the sections you were referring to in Revelation might be just not peoples, but angelic or spiritual beings that have lifted up their voice and are, I can't remember all the verses you shared, but I'm going to look at them as being something. I don't think every time we look at the many waters that it's just people. It might be people because, you know, but it might be angels. Angelic beings that are talking, that are raising up their voice. Sometimes cacophony against God, maybe some for God. And I think you read a couple of verses in it that they were praising God. So anyway, my thoughts.
Cool thoughts. Yeah, I'm and where I'm tracking this is number one in its relationship specifically to the nations, because that was mentioned in the text that we were reading. It basically communicated them as being from all the nations and tying them together with the redeemed. And not only that, Bob, but the replacement theology of, luckily not us for Jerusalem, I'm not going there, but us for the sons of God. I see a replacement, and that's where I'm taking this, to where we are literally taking the place of previous sons that really didn't do a very good job.
Oh, totally agree with you there. There's no question that we are going to replace, I'll use the term fallen angels. I don't like the term because nobody's fallen yet. But yeah, I mean, it's obvious from Romans 8 that, you know, it doth not yet appear what we shall be, right? You know, the sons, the whole of creation is waiting for the sons of God to be manifested. So yeah, that we're going to have bodies like unto his glorious body, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Now, tying that into the Hebrew, especially the one that you just said, these confined beings, and I agree with that. I see that particularly in the Hebrew. And the idea that there's a change that is going to be made at our gathering. I mean, there's going to be, there's going to be a great throwout.
Yeah, really.
Devil's getting kicked out, and along with whomever. I know that we've had discussion about the 1/3 and when they went down, but there's going to be a reordering to things. There's going to be, and those beings that were confined. And the thing that I'm tapping into is that in the context that we read so far, and I'm going to take it further next week. This group is taking over the praise leadership, not the praise. Everybody praising God and the Lamb up there, obviously, but they are taking a leadership role in this praise thing. And I want to be able to tie that back into the Christian writings as to our function, especially concerning speaking in tongues, because I think that is a paramount manifestation of the Spirit in what it does, especially with some of the interpretations I've heard over the years of how we exemplify and magnify God in a manner that just doesn't get done in the Hebrew writings, because the image was all screwed up. It was jacked, and the sons of God weren't doing anything to help that in any manner, way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, they were contributing to the degradation of God's image. They were propounding it, exalting themselves and wanting to be honored themselves. But it's so cool when that one angel tells John, "Don't worship me, worship God." He's pretty adamant about it when John was going to worship him. I think it's in 20 or 21. The angel says, "Don't do that to me. Worship God, worship God." Because
another cool thing that you read tonight was the conversation. Was it one of the elders says, "What's going on here?" Right? Was it? Where was that?
That's in 7.
Was it 7? No,
Yeah.
the elders in Revelation, they are heavy duty hitters. They're not people. They are the 24 elders who cast their throne, their crowns before whatever, or give up their thrones. Those guys are literally thrones. You've heard of, dominions, thrones, principalities, powers. Those guys, they're pretty heavy hitters, and John's up there by Revelation, and he's asking John a question. It's like, holy shit. Wait a minute. I'm supposed to ask you questions, right?
Right.
He's asking, and he's just like, well, what's going on here? I think that's what it was. I was stunned by that.
Yeah.
Another thing that you guys should know is that it is not for a prophet to be part of the counsel of God is not just, silly thinking. It's been going on. You can read it in Job. You can read it in Isaiah, that Isaiah himself, the prophet, by revelation, is caught up again, like John or like Paul, to the third heaven. And he's sitting in the council, listening to angels and God talking about stuff, right? And if you read Isaiah 6 really slowly, John is sitting there, Isaiah is sitting there, and he's going, well, pick me, I'll go. Because God, I think it was, or maybe it's the angel of God says, who's going to go for us? And Isaiah goes, well, I'll go. It's really, so don't think that it's unheard of that Paul or John the Revelator got taken up to heaven, quote unquote, John over and over again, but Paul himself, like Michael was reading, this happened all the time with the prophets of old. They were taken up there by revelation, given the glory trail, and shown what's going on, and asked to do things, or shown the spiritual nature of what's going on behind the scenes. And they're going, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Or, okay, I'll go, send me. It's awesome stuff.
Yeah, that word, is it diakonos, that minister word?
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with that too. being made a minister, diakonos.
Yeah.
We're diakonos of the New Testament. We're
Yeah, we are.
able
We're
diakonos. Jesus Christ is a diakonos of the circumcision.
Yeah, he is. He had, in fact, that word in Romans, it's translated poorly in most translations because it's after the resurrection, right? Supposedly, for most Christian ministries, Christian churches, they think, well, Jesus, that was the end of that. And so they translate that verse, Jesus was a minister, a diakonos to the circumcision. No, that's not the text. The text is has become a diakonos to the circumcision. That's why when he comes back, there's a lot of Israelitish stuff in the book of Revelation that, the law's back in, the temple's back in, the priesthood's back in. So it's not that Jesus was a minister to the circumcision. Certainly he was as Messiah, but it says he has become a minister to the circumcision, just like we are diakonos, or ministers of the new covenant. We're serving those that are going to get the new covenant. I mean, you guys probably know this, but I don't think we're in the new covenant, New Testament times today. We're in the administration of the secret, the administration of the grace of God. That has nothing to do with, well, it's been started. Jesus inaugurated the new covenant, but he's no longer here. So the new covenant, has a lot to do with the testator. It takes the death of a testator, or the person that inaugurates the covenant, that which was made in his blood. And he's not here. When he comes back, we're going to have a new covenant eventually. But I don't think we're in the new covenant. I mean, that may shock you, but that's the way it is in my head.
But now going back to that, there's definitely indication that we help administer it. We help him administer it in whatever function. And personally, from what I'm reading, it's the nations of the world. They have to. God, in what is it? Deuteronomy 32 talks about the sons of God being assigned to nations of the world.
Uh-huh.
And the Numbers tablets out of Genesis.
Uh-huh.
Nations were divided amongst the sons of God, and there's going to be nations in the millennial kingdom, and they're going to grow to be very powerful with the blessings that are going on, but they're going to have to be kept on track, because there's going to be a lot of carnal people, people that have not received the Spirit per se, as we will have it, or as Israel will have it. But they're going to have to be managed. They're going to have to be encouraged. They're going to have to be, everything we do now, we will do then, but to a much more mature, telos, perfected degree.
But then does that tie in with the leaves, healing the nations?
Oh no, that's another. I got a pretty bad one on the leaves. I mean, I'm into that last thing, and outside there's things outside, and I'm working that outside. Dan and I have been discussing it. I'm not ready for it yet, but I'm working on the things that are outside the city.
Oh yeah, at the end.
They're out there. I mean,
yeah, there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth even after the new heavenly Jerusalem comes down. Right?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that wicked? Isn't that just like, oh crap, it's still going to go on?
Yeah, or it's like.
But who are those people?
Well, there's no inheritance. It's the thing that I'm starting to see, and I'm starting to question, and this is really out there, but this is me. This is what I lay in bed at night and think about. Is we have an inheritance, and that inheritance we have in the seed in us now as a guarantee. We have in our relationship with God and Jesus Christ when we're gathered. We have in the millennial kingdom. We have a thing to do, a thing that we inherit, heirs with Christ, joint heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. He has a thing to do. He has his heirship. He even has a plot of land in Jerusalem that is specifically his. Anyways, and we have all these nations in the world, and I was going to bring this up. That was part of this teaching concerning judgments, because in the judgment of the sheep and the goats, people that are identified to enter into that kingdom are not necessarily people that knew Christ, because it says that if you've done any of these to the least of mine, these are people that have helped believers, that have done good things for you. I mean, they've been there for you. They might not have taken your philosophy or your. I mean, if we were gathered together right now, there's a lot of people that know you that might not make the trip, but it doesn't mean they won't get in the kingdom, because if you have done to the least of these, you've done it to me. Is the judgment in the goat and sheep? Well, what's to make us think that the judgment of the great white throne will be any different? I mean, I mean, God is he going to have one standard and one judgment, and another standard and another judgment? Because everybody is going to be led into this new heaven and earth through the manifestations of the sons of God and what God has done in us. Now, I'm not insinuating, and I don't want to insinuate, a lot of people get thrown in the pit. I see that. I'm not trying to take it away. But there's also inheritances that could have happened that did not, that look like that's what goes into the pit. In other words, we're going to go in the temple. It doesn't say, this is another thing, it doesn't say we eat from the tree of life. It says we have access to it, because the tree of life is said, the leaves of it is for the healing of the nations. Now, why is nations in a new heaven and earth going to need healing? Why are I see all this stuff's coming up about, you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, it's not automatic armor. It's not robotic. I think so many Christians, and one particular guy comes to mind, but they think that, well, as soon as we're gathered together, we're on automatic pilot and it all goes good. Well, I mean, I know we have life under the ages, that's for sure. But that doesn't mean that we get a brain implant and we're totally, on automatic pilot for the rest of eternity. And, to your point, that means, Michael, that the two gay guys that typed up my master's thesis and took care of my baby girl when she was 6 months old, they may get in. Because I swear those guys were the most spiritual guys I ever met, but I never got to share enough of the word with them. And I know that there's millions of people that, the guy from Borneo, right, that either never heard enough to believe, and yet it's the goodness of God that leads a man unto repentance, the gentleness of God. It's not, well, if you didn't hear about Jesus, we're going to throw you in the lake of fire. See ya. It's like, and I also, like you, am not, I'm not dissuaded from the fact that I will pitch a few of the assholes that treated me like shit into the lake with a pitchfork if I can. Because they're out there and they've been thwarting the goodness of God from day one in my life, and they're going to get
there's a specific word that's used in Revelation 22 in the first couple of verses concerning these people that is not in Revelation 22, where it talks about those that are outside the city. And the word has to do with, I gotta show this, because
it's not the word, it's not the Greek word asshole, is it?
Almost, yes, yeah. Well, that might be related to that. But I gotta show this because this word is significant.
It's significant. And, I got out of sharing. Good.
Am I sharing?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the final chapter of all things,
Oh.
got this let me find it.
What does it sound like? I can search mine while you're working on it.
I,
King James?
I am in the NIV.
I know, but what are you thinking? What does it sound like?
It gives attributes of people that go in the pit.
Okay.
Sexual morality.
Yeah, sexual immorality. Let's see.
Murderers.
Oh, murderers. I love that one.
Yeah. But there's one word that's in there.
Abomination.
That's it. That's it. The ones that have become abominable.
Whoremongers. I love
Yeah.
that word. What a great word. Whoremonger. What is it? What was the word, Dana?
Abominable. The ones that have become abominable.
Yeah.
Don't.
Uh,
21.
Abomination, abominations, abominable. That would be Revelation 21:8. But the fearful and unbelieving, the abominable, the murderers, and whoremongers. So that's the word. Just read it, Bob. That's a weird one. Wow.
Well, the word, yeah, the abominable one is in that description, and they're they will be co-signed to the fury lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death. Okay. Now,
there it is. Yeah.
when you get to 22 on these guys that are outside the city, it gives all the other attributes, but it does something really cool in here. In 22, where he's describing, find it.
Gates of the city to testify.
For outside
Plagues.
the city.
God adds the plagues. Love that.
No, there's no such thing.
Is it without the city?
Yeah.
City. Hang on a minute.
Okay, here it is, 14 and 15. Blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have the right to the tree of life. That's literally access, and may go through the gates of the city. Outside are dogs who practice magic arts,
Yeah.
the sexually immoral, the murderers, the idolaters, and everyone who this word love is really bad because it makes it sound like agapea, but it's not. It's phileo. Phileo, and practices falsehood. Now, number one, abominable ones are not in there.
Hang on a minute.
The word abominable is left out of this context.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah.
But these are people that had a friendship with these false practices, that had a relationship with them. They had a not a love, not an agape, but they. And what I'm seeing here is the difference between the ones doing the deceiving and the ones being deceived. So, anyways,
others must stay outside. Awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. No inheritance. We have the inheritance. That's our. We go into the city.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the cool part, you know. It is. It's the city, you know. It is the city in concept that Abraham saw, like you said earlier tonight.
Telos, the end result, the perfection that shall come.
Yeah, and God's going to be there. That's really cool.
Totally.
Did you read tonight? Was it you tonight? I'm the first and the last. I know it was Jesus, but then there was another one where it was talking about God.
Yes.
Was and is to come. There was one verse you shared tonight where it was is to come, and it refers to God. And people don't really get it, that God is not on the planet either, but he will be. And in Second Peter 3, it talks about false teachers saying, you know, where's the promise of his coming? It's not about Jesus. It's about God, because God is coming back. He's coming to the planet. It says so in the Bible. And yeah, I love the fact that Jesus is coming back, but his Father's going to be there, and he's going to be walking around, and you're going to be able to talk with him, not just Jesus. It's, you know, the purpose of you read this tonight too, Michael, the purpose of the ages, right? Jesus wasn't the purpose of the ages. His work was according to the purpose of the ages. The purpose of the ages is to, you know, ending the cosmic conflict and coming back to the planet so that it can be the way he wanted it to be at the beginning. It's very much bookends type theology. And, you know, first and the last, you know, who was and is to come, isn't always Jesus. It's God.
Right. Even, I mean, we got 1,000 years to go after this where God will not be on planet. He will still be throned in heaven.
Yeah. And we'll be still waiting for him. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. There's somebody else coming. It's great. And there's a lot of places in the Hebrew scriptures that talk about God coming back to the planet too. When you read the Hebrew scriptures, don't forget to think that it's always been there. I mean, meaning the stuff that's in the book of Revelation, it's in the Hebrew scriptures. I mean, the myriad of angels, the Battle of Armageddon, all that stuff is there. And it's just John really did a good job of clarifying it to his audience. But there's so much in there. It's scary, really scary. Even the lake of fire. I mean, if you really are careful with your reading and you just don't read one translation, if something strikes your mind as being weird, look into it, because it's probably really fun. Oh God. Oh man, thanks, Michael. That was great stuff tonight. I'm glad I showed up. Thanks for the invite, Don. Keep sending them to me, even if I don't show up. I really appreciate it.
You're muted, Don.
Yeah, thanks, Don.
He's just jabbering away. We can't hear him.
You're muted, Don. Your lips are.
Oh, there we
He's
go.
sleeping. He's sleeping. He's rubbing his eyes. He's watching. Wait a minute. What is he watching? He's what? Monday night. Monday Night Football. Who's playing, John?
I'm not sure who's playing tonight.
Just
A lot of times I am watching it. I've got it on right over there.
really, exactly. Who was it? One of the teachings I did. Can't you change it? I'm watching Columbo. Wait a minute, Columbo. That was the 70s, wasn't it? Columbo. And so he's pulling my leg. Oh golly. Well, I better go. I love you guys all. Thanks so much for inviting me. And
Thanks for coming.
those who are on the list, I mean, you can invite anybody to Sunday night too. I hope I see you guys there. It'll be a wild one.
Send our love to your family also.
Thank you, Dana. I love you guys too.
Hugs and kisses.
Wow, quite a night here.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
I love Monday nights.
Me too.
I'm not allowed to watch football, but I wouldn't anyways.
Yeah,
I am
football,
starting to-
nothing changes. It's the same.
I'm actually starting to like fellowship after hours more than the teachings.
Fellowship. I love fellowship too, Don. I'm with you.
I mean, a lot of times things get said, and I'm lucky. I get to edit this stuff. That means I see it 2 or 3 times at least. Beyond what we do here, I get to see it again 2 or 3 more times because I'm, you know, checking this and doing that. And
Yeah, but it's interesting, Don, that Mike showed me one time, or maybe more than once, when he was doing a study, that it's actually to have fellowship, there's usually a teaching first, and then like-minded believers can come with hearts knitted together around the word that they have learned to have true fellowship.
yes, I realize that, you know, it all hinges on the word. If the word isn't here, forget it. It's all a waste.
Scholarship.
But we do have the word here every Monday night.
Without the word, we're just like everybody else.
And we're just a social club then.
Yeah, good looking social club though.
That's true. Well, I look forward to next week.
Yeah, I'm going to keep riding this pony because I'm seeing there's just and I advise you guys too. There's STF has a
14 hours.
well no
14.
STF has a sign up for classes online.
Yes, the academy. I'm a member of the academy.
I've gotten through 15 of the 18 on the Hope that John has redone, and I mentioned that in the teaching. Awesome. Now, that said, there's questions I have. I talked to Bob today. I said he should read your No More Seas thing.
Oh yeah.
because John kind of played with that, and there is no more sea in Revelation 21, and he has some other things to say about it that I think Bob has more insight in. But that's where I believe, with all my heart, the body, we cannot function and will not function until the Lord comes and gets us. But
Right.
the more we are united around the word, there are just things that God is going to show Chris that I could never see unless Chris showed them to me, and vice versa, and with all of us that way. And there's so much division in the world, and in the Christian community. My goodness gracious, they can't even get back Ephesians 4 to keep the unity of faith and the bonds of peace. That's why we have how much was the last one? 650 different denominations.
There are actually 40,000 denominations.
40,000 denominations.
Christian denominations.
I mean, the first practical thing for the church in Ephesians: keep the unity of the faith and the bonds of peace. Well, give me a break, man. But there's still things to be learned from those faithful people
In other,
by the Spirit. All of them, something. It might be a tidbit. It might be, but it's in there for the body to be edified, to grow up more.
yes, and I am so glad that we are no longer taught ignore everybody else.
Oh God, yes.
Because I mean, we were taught that, and we did it, and I think we missed out on a lot
Yeah, it's
for a long time.
The song was "Only the Lonely."
So,
Listen to
also you get
everybody speed up the growth process, I think.
you also get into a "thou shalt only believe us,"
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
and we are never wrong.
It's true.
And it didn't start out that way, but it ended up that way.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Well, we'll close it out. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next.
Love you
And
all.
don't
Bye night.
Good night.
don't forget, if you have a subject you want taught, right there. Trying to get my hand right there. There. It'll say Don at pltf.org. If you have a subject you want covered, write to us, let us know, and we'll divide it up and somebody will tackle it for you and see if we can't do better for you. In the meantime, happy trails.
You're there in the air.